So welcome to this exclusive video interaction, Mr. Pradeep, GS, Managing Director and Vice President Sales and Marketing of JOST India, a very popular brand in the Indian market, a leader in the trailer component and systems space. And Pradeep probably needs no introduction. Everybody in the trailer segment and the commercial vehicle segment in industry in India would probably be knowing Pradeep quite well. Thank you for your time, first up, Pradeep, and also for engaging with us in this interaction.
Thank you for having me on this discussion, Bala.
Yeah. So let's get into it with the obvious topic that everybody is talking about and facing at this point in time. How has COVID-19 impacted your business in India? If you can start off with that, and also an update on the current scenario and situation at your end, Pradeep.
Mm-hmm. So the short point is between 23rd of March and the 12th of May, there was a zero billing situation for us due to the lockdown, and we followed the lockdown prescribed instructions quite rigorously. People staying at home, and I was myself locked up in the hotel room that I was staying in, and then we utilized the time very effectively. We restarted on the 13th of May, and with around 25% of the manpower that we are licensed to have. And the first challenge that we had to counter was to make sure that the people, when we restarted, are aware of how to work by strictly following social distancing. It was probably easy for them to stay at home in a private life to follow social distancing and so on. But when they come to the office in this environment, how to practice it to the hilt is something which we had to discuss quite in detail. It was meticulously planned. And since the 13th of May, our team has gotten into the groove, learning very well how to work alongside, practicing all the prescribed norms, right from the time that they entered the factory until they exited. And the ramp up, of course, depends upon how the OEMs would send us the call off. They also have either restarted like us or are in the process of restarting. The supply chain issues, in my opinion, are yet to come up, although our entire supplier base has been telling us that they are very well prepared with their planning and to counter the current situation and to ramp up. But only when we get into the actual production is something that we will have to see what gets revealed. To sum it up in a nutshell, I would say the financial year 2020 and 2021 will basically be about survival, and that too with management of available funds and cash flows. Cash flows would, of course, depend upon how the business situation would pan up and who will get how much business and so on. The current situation is that we've got some export orders to keep our machines running for at least a month. We are exporting to Germany and China. That keeps our entire workforce busy. And we have the next 1 month at least to look up to and produce, get used to things, and also do some billing.
Nice, Pradeep. That's good to hear. And how would you sum up the way your company has handled this unprecedented crisis? Obviously, this is something that's, though we've had recessions in the past, crises in the past, this is probably one of a kind. So how would you sum up the way your company and probably your workforce, everybody handled this particular situation?
There's a saying, desperate times call for desperate measures. Times like these call for setting a clear direction, especially from the top to the organization and to the employees. We, at the first sign of the lockdown announcement, we set up a COVID-19 steering committee. We had daily meetings. The first immediate task we had was to engage with the entire team, the management staff, the shop floor associates, and so on, because everybody was unsure. They needed to be communicated with and said what they could expect, how the situation would pan out, although we ourselves did not know much about how things would be in terms of the next 1 week or 2 weeks and so on. The intention was to facilitate bidirectional communication to alleviate any kind of unsure feelings and, least of all, let any rumors get spread. Everyone also got time to introspect on managing personal lives, facing unforeseen situations like we face right now. As a team, each one motivated the other to set clear personal and organizational goals. This was more on the softer side. We had intense learning sessions from our own colleagues. For example, the engineering department doing it to the rest of the company and so on in slots. We had online meetings through MS Teams or Skype meetings and so on. And contrary to much of the fear we had that there will be heavy pressure on the internet and there could be connectivity issues, we had a good experience which made the learning and knowledge sharing exercise very pleasurable. We also did some intelligent fund management with the reserves we had, and intensely controlled unavoidable, avoidable expenses and what could be totally put off. That was very important because cash conservation was key, because we were quite aware that the next 1 month at least, there would be no billing and we had to manage with very little resources that we have. And we knew that post the lockdown, we would all get back to office and the onus would be on not touching equipment, not coming close to each other and so on. So we used the time to make infrastructural change within the company. We converted all the wash basins taps to foot operated ones, the contactless sanitizer dispensing, hand wash dispensing, even we had a foot operated door latch so that people won't touch the doors and so on. All these things were done by a team of in-house experts, of course, taking special permission for essential services from the local administration. We also had time to relook into our strategies, make or buy, and we had a revision plan come up. Of course, it is time now that we can think about it and implement what looks feasible in the short, medium, and long term. That's something which was very, very effectively done. And I talked so much about business and let's say the social life, but what was very important was how do we take care of our employees? What happens to their salary? I'm proud to say, Bala, that we took care of full salaries of every employee, be it blue collar, white collar, contractual, apprentice. We are committed to take care of our people, and we did it through the entire lockdown period. We hope to have a good transition into the business operations time now, where we hope we will have enough orders to run the company for the whole month without actually looking at block closures or something. Then nobody would lose even a single penny, and I would be proud if we are able to continue with that situation. That's in a nutshell how we handle this current situation.
Amazing. Firstly, it's very, very heartening to hear what you just shared. We are going through really, really desperate times, very, very difficult times as well. And it's heartening to hear the way you have handled, both the personal side, ensuring personal safety of your team and everybody, and also coming up with some ingenious solutions as you indicated, and also making probably best use of time to remain productive and keep upskilling the team as well. Really, really wonderful to hear. I'm sure I hope people, who watch the video will probably take some cue out of it, probably like a benchmark for others as well, right? Way to go. Turning our attention a little to the industry, Pradeep, commercial vehicle and trailer in particular. What do you think the industry and the different stakeholders should be doing to help the industry actually come out of this crisis? If you can throw some light on what different stakeholders need to be doing in your view.
I also took time to interact with various agencies, a lot of industry captains and experts and so on. And what I'm going to say is also a mixture of my opinion and also the information that I have collected from various experts of the industry. The COVID-19 pandemic situation has put different kinds of pressures on different segments. Each one must come up with a specific solution to the segment that they belong to. I'll come specifically to this point at the end of the discussion. But first and the most important thing every company should do is to keep the communication channel open with various stakeholders. the top management to the board members and the investors, and to the middle management, and the middle management to the lower tier in the pyramid, and so on. And we also, from my experience, I'm telling you, we encouraged suggestions from all the levels, and we were open. And I would recommend that everybody be open to listen to suggestions all around and implement what could be beneficial to both the company and the staff. Making the staff part of the solution to a common crisis, more often than not, increases the commitment in the long term, and ultimately it means success to the organization. On the next, more operational side, I would say curtail expenses which are variable in nature, or in the least reduce them to the minimum, and request and engage with the service partners and ask them if they can consider reducing their fees without intimidation. That's very key. And you can call upon their good conscience to support you. Review and postpone high capex investments. That's a key. What we also have decided to do is to scrape the inventory pileup we have, get every product out which is saleable, convert them to cash, which was probably locked up for months and years on. And we could think about offering heavy discounts just to make sure that we have some cash coming in with very little efforts. I guess the fast moving items would be always kept at a minimum stock level, and once the lockdown is lifted, that can be managed very well. And if payments to creditors are huge, and if one has good suppliers in the database, talk to them, in agreement with them, try to break down the payments, the payments outstanding to them into small lots, or even try to postpone with billing suppliers. That's something which I would recommend that be done effectively. Manage funds intelligently. One thing what we also did was that the reserves could be parked in flexible fixed deposits in the banks, and the liquid asset would sweat by itself to offer some cash to the company. That's something. It could be small, but every drop of water adds to the mighty ocean. Then, very important, as I said, I come back to this point again. Don't let, if possible, any negative impact to take place on the salaries of the staff. The impact that the salaries would have on the bottom line is very minimal, but the impact that a salary cut would have on the lives of the people is huge, and they will not forget the negative impact that will have had on them for a long time. It's just not transactional, but it's more emotional. I would like to see every member of our company be comfortable, secure that this situation has come, but the company will stand by us, and not just in words. It's not a lip service, but we actually mean it when the money goes into their bank account. That's something which I would say. These are some small things which we have done, and also a part of the advice, if I'm allowed to say so, to give to the other people who may be listening to this conversation.
Brilliant. I mean, again, makes a lot of sense, and to actually walk the talk. I think on one side, we're seeing a lot of companies actually support employees like yours. On the other side, there is obviously enough and more news, negative news of people being fired left, right, center in companies in hundreds and thousands. So it's always good to hear something positive, as well. What do you think is the government's role in this whole thing? Obviously, we've had developments over the last couple of weeks. There's been a huge fund, a stimulus package that's been announced, but the auto industry seems to have, for some reason, been completely overlooked, if I may say so. And slowly, there are voices coming out again requesting for the government to actually focus and come up with some specific packages for the auto industry. So again, from a commercial vehicle and if possible, a trailer perspective, what do you think the government should do to first probably revive sentiments, and also parallelly, the demand on the ground level? What do you think the government should be doing?
I would answer this point in two sections. One, expectations from the government, of course. And I would also say, what do we as the community from the industry are willing, what are we willing to do? That's also very important. Say from the government, let me start with the first half of my reply to this point. we talk of GST for a long time. Of course, automobiles and auto components have suffered the tax burden of the highest value in the bracket of 28%. It's high time that uh, percentage got a relook into, and then there's a reduction. That's a request. Then a big impetus needs to be given on infrastructure development. I'm talking of the public-private partnership model, where people these days are willing to give a toll fee without any problem, as long as they get a good experience of driving on the highways and so on. And much similar to what the government has already started opening up a lot of PSU sector to privatization. I would even say go to every segment that affects the lives of the people. For example, why not think of privatizing the railway stations? The airports have been done in a PPP model. Why not railway stations? So come out of the conservative mindset, be open, where participation from private sectors can also mean it's a win-win situation, both for the public as well as the incumbent, the government of the day. And there is a growing chorus. It's been due for a long time. I would reiterate that the scrapping of very old vehicles, especially the commercial vehicles, which are more than 15 years old, it's high time that the government did something about it and implement this without too much delay. Then I would also say the government should look at improving the tier 2 cities. I know we are talked about 100 smart cities. Some may have been already in the plan. There is a roadmap, but I would say develop the suburbs of these tier 2 cities. What does that mean? We all saw this migrant crisis, migrant laborers crisis, where they're all concentrated in big cities, and it's a challenge for them to get back. If the suburbs of tier 2 cities are developed, industrialized, maybe there is no big need for people from small villages and tier 2 cities to migrate to a big city. There could be suburbs of tier 2 cities where you're talking of big industry setup, and there could be small ecosystems away from big metropolitan cities, which are facing a lot of pressure from highly dense population. Then I would say implement the trailer homologation code. This is specific to the segment that we are in. The trailer homologation code has been in discussion since 2008, when I myself was a part of a 3-member team. We went to ARAI and made a submission. Of course, there was a lot of snowballing effect when OEMs got added, the trailer builders got added, and so on. After 10 long years, the code itself was drawn up. But then the implementation was attempted, but due to the interests of various stakeholders, it is getting postponed. But there is a time, this is a time that we have to expect the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways to put its foot down and say the homologation code is in the interest of not only the industry, but we are talking of safer roads, we are talking of safety on the roads to the lives of the people and so on. That's something which I would look forward to. As a consequence to the trailer homologation code, I would also say that the government implement the interchangeability of tractor trailers. Why do I say this? If you look at countries in Europe or the North American market or even South America, 90% of the market is tractor trailers, with only 10% being rigid. In India, it's the other way around. At best, it's about 15% tractor trailers, with 85% of the market being rigid trucks. Now, all these things add on to the pressures on the industry to come out with a model where the total cost of ownership to a fleet owner can be looked into and made beneficial to the fleet owner. I would say strictly implement regulations and punitive guidelines also for overloading on the roads. I also said I would answer this point in 2 sections. Let me come to the industry side. What are we willing to do? What's the willingness of the manufacturers? It's actually disheartening when I see on the roads we have multi-axle rigid trucks. Until let's say 2014 or 2015, we had only up to 35 ton as tractor trailers. Beyond that, we had up to 35 ton as rigid trucks. Beyond that, we had tractor trailers. But nowadays, due to various compulsions, I see 37 ton, 43 ton, and even 49 ton rigid tractors. We as JOST are present all over the world, various continents and the markets which matters. We have never seen rigid trucks of 49 ton. That actually defeats the very purpose of the design of a tractor trailer. And in my opinion, that's a little bit regressive if we look at going towards offering benefit to the fleet owners and in terms of total cost of ownership, which comes from tire wear, fuel consumption, flexibility. These days in Europe, I am told that the trailers could be even used as temporary warehouses in the parking yards for a couple of days. All these benefits get negated if we come out with higher tonnage, very low horsepower trucks which drive at a snail's pace on the road. We are seeing a lot of expressways coming up, and it's high time that we see more tractor trailers, and at least 30-40% of the M&HCV population, if not similar to Europe and the US. Interchangeability of tractor trailers will give a lot of flexibility to the fleet owners, where they can have a minimum number of tractor heads to a lot of trailers, and the turnaround time can be so high that we are not talking of the truck during a breakdown or at the point of delivery getting stuck for a long time. So this is, in short, what I would say as my second part of the answer to the point of what we expect from the government. We have a responsibility too.
Right. Well said. I think this the point of trailer homologation, and also which direction the industry should be heading more into tractors, and in line with more developed markets like Europe. I think this has been a discussion for a very, very, very long time. Just a sub question there. Do you see light at the end of the tunnel? Do you see things moving in the right direction? What is your take? Because you've been in this field for a very long time. As you indicated, you were part of the first team that approached ARII to get this whole thing started. What is your take? Do you see this happening anytime soon?
This whole discussion started in 2008 and 9, and my board members still make fun of me, if I can say, because I've been saying next 3 years, and so on, and we are already in 2020. And the pace at which the current discussions are going on, I would say, unfortunately, another 3 years, at least.
My God, yeah, that's a simple answer, but has a very, very deep impact. And yeah, I mean, exactly. As always, I mean, we can only hope that somebody will push the right buttons from the government side, and make things happen in the right direction they should be heading, for the interest of everybody in the industry. I mean, not specific to any stakeholder, for that matter. So, I mean, moving on from what the government should be doing, what the different industry stakeholders should be doing, the OEMs, the suppliers as well. How do you see this financial year, and probably also the next financial year? How do you see these financial years for our industry? Obviously, we understand it's very, very difficult to predict. There are a lot of variables, especially what the government comes up with. But what would your take be?
Companies which are surviving on cash flows and borrowings when the pandemic set in and the lockdown was announced will have additional pressures, and that's a no-brainer. And some might even bite the dust, unfortunately. As I said, financial year 2020 and 21 will be all about a game of conserving resources and how to survive. Following the current dynamics, I would say the possibility of start of a turnaround exists not earlier than June 2021, unless a miracle happens. Adjustments, realignments, and even consolidation of companies at the lower tiers is what I expect in the next financial year. Beyond this, we may speculate quite a lot about what would happen, but it would be like you're putting your thoughts ahead of time. And therefore, I would hold my horses before saying anything more.
Right. Okay. Again, I think you had already shared your views on the medium to long-term outlook as well. Few words on that, and how does JOST view your prospects in the medium to long term? How much of a change or a correction do you think has to be done, given the pandemic crisis that we're currently going through?
Okay. I would again touch on the topics of the opportunities that the industry and JOST have, and the medium to long term impact. I'm foreseeing that new ways of operations will be discovered or innovated, and work from home is a popular concept where everybody is thinking about extending this beyond the lockdown as well. I would say in the manufacturing industry, it's a challenge to do this across all disciplines of the business, but we'll have to see how best we can do this. And would this give an opportunity for more residential units to be sold because people want an informal offices at home? Speculation, but I've heard this from a few of them as well. And there will be preference for expansion in countries other than China, surely, because there's a big favor towards India if the government plays its card very well. I also heard that the government is talking about offering industrial land as big as the country Luxembourg itself. So that's something which comes as a positive outlook. In my opinion, e-commerce will flourish better than before. Having said that, at the same time, the local Kirana shops will get their due recognition, at least from the local population. They would probably not prefer to go to big malls and supermarkets. And the mid segment to some segment of the upper entry level cars, I would say will pick up in numbers, basically because people are now going to be hygiene and health conscious, and they may not be comfortable sharing the cabs or using the taxis. On the impact itself, I see that the healthcare, non-impulsive, essential FMCG industry and banking and financial segments, these are the segments which will come out very soon and strong after the lockdown is lifted. But the manufacturing industry, the auto ancillaries like cars, steel and textiles, these are the industries. Consumer electronics, I think that's where the huge demand comes from. I think this industry will take a long time to come up, not only because we are not talking of the OEMs themselves, but the tier 2, tier 3s. They will take time, and supply chain disruptions are expected to take place. And strong companies will recover with demand. Again, demand is the key word here. I hope here that the government announced stimulus package of the 20 lakh crore will reach the masses more directly than indirectly and become a notional announcement. There are some segments currently in red, like airlines, hospitality, restaurants, malls, and so on. Theaters will probably take a long time to revive. I even heard in an informal discussion with one of the stock market experts, they say people will probably invest in home theaters, and they may not be comfortable going to multiplexes, sitting there among so many people, standing the risk of contagion and so on. So there is a positive side to the post-COVID era as well. And the medium to long term, I would say from an Indian perspective, is still quite positive.
That is very, very good to hear. I mean, I think it also has a lot to do with the global change and shift, if we may call it so, from China to India. Probably will have a very big impact as well, right? So thank you, Pradeep. I think we've touched upon most of the points that we wanted to discuss about. Any parting words from your side, probably a message to whoever is actually viewing this during these tough times?
Yes, definitely. A lot of advice is given in various social media platforms, but I would say staying positive is very key. Draw up a clear roadmap, break the difficulties into addressable short, medium, and long term, have clear possibilities, accept what cannot be changed, adapt to the situation, and with a clear roadmap, I think people can come out trumps from this situation. Of course, financial strength is very, very important. And here I am hoping that many of the companies would have planned for rainy days like this. And coming back to the point again, stay positive is the key word that I would say.
Thank you so much, Pradeep. Very, very encouraging and a very practical kind of a suggestion or a message, I would say, to the industry. So once again, thank you so much for taking time out, sharing your views, coming up with some very, very good insights for all of us. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Bala, for giving me this opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.